So today we're going to talk about the difference between summary, analysis, and reflection because every time we have a guest speaker, you will be writing a whole reflection piece and you will have to do all three of those skills. You'll have to summarize, you'll have to analyze, and you'll have to reflect. So we're going to get started by taking a look at this painting or this image. This is called Christina's World by Andrew Wyeth. And to really clarify the difference between summary and analysis, which are two of the things you'll do for your guest speakers, I want you to start off by summarizing or describing what you see in this painting in Christina's World. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want you to analyze. And this is where you're going to interpret. This is where you're going to draw conclusions. So while you're filling out these boxes, I want you to think about this. Summary, you'll notice in the parenthetical statement, is just what you see. It's not at all how you feel or what we're supposed to suppose or as I said, conclude. This is just what you see. So for example, if I wanted to describe the girl, I might just say she's wearing a pink dress. I didn't say anything about what conclusions I drew from the fact that she is wearing a dress or what color it was or anything like that. I'm just naming what I see. So this is a good time to hit pause, make a list of some of the things that you notice or that you're seeing about the painting, and then you can press play again. So hopefully you found some things to say about the painting. Maybe you talked about the house or the barn. Maybe you talked about the fact that there seems to be a more worn piece of land up closer to the house. Maybe you talked about the fence line. If you zoom in really close, this is so cool. I love looking at this really closely. There looks to be a clothesline. Like, look, do you see this little black dot? That's like a clothesline with clothes on it. There's a ladder that is against the house. There's all kinds of things going on. In any case, perhaps you talked about the house looking like it's in need of upkeep. It hasn't been painted in a while. You'll notice that this appears to be the driveway. It is worn out from tires. You can see that there seems to be some sort of set of tires that have been driving down this way quite a bit. All of those, we're not making any judgments. We're not drawing any conclusions. We're just talking about the fact that we can see these things. Now, let's turn our attention to analyzing what we see. If, for example, you mentioned the very muted colors, we have a very, very light pink. Everything is really yellow and dark. There's no bright, vibrant colors. There's no life. There's no green grass. There's no flowers. The house hasn't been painted for probably decades. That is something that I might think about for my analysis, that perhaps this is a rundown house. They don't have enough money to keep it updated. Her dress might be very old because it's such a faded light color. So this is where we're heading into the analysis. The summary is identifying that she's wearing a dress. It is light pink. The analysis is where we say, well, is it faded because it's so old and she has to wear it so much? Is perhaps the house run down because they can't afford to keep it up? This is where you're drawing your conclusions. So take a few minutes and I want you to pause the video, pause the screencast, and write down some conclusions that you're coming to based on this column, the summary column that you've already written. So now that you've drawn some conclusions, I want you to look over the difference between your left column or the summary, and the right column, the analysis. And what I want you to take away from this is that summary is just basically regurgitation. What do you know? There's no work for you to do really at all. But the analysis, this is where you're involved. This is where you draw your conclusions and you tell us what you think about what you had written in the summary. So, for example, hopefully you notice, look at this arm, you guys. It is just painfully thin. So in your summary, you might have said that she is very slender, thin, whatever you want to call it. Whereas in the analysis, you might start to worry about her health. Is she so thin? Is she emaciated? Is she very ill? What's going on here? So, summary, once again, I'm going to say this over and over again. I know I'm harping on it. Summary is, what do you see? And then analysis is, why is it important? What conclusions can you draw? Okay, so let's scroll down, turn to the next page. I want you to do this and don't take any break in between the two. This painting is called The Tragedy, so that's a little leading already. But it's by Pablo Picasso. You are going to do both columns kind of simultaneously. You're going to summarize, write all the things that you notice about the painting. I also want you to draw conclusions. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one. You could just have a whole bunch of things that you notice and then maybe like a few conclusions or a few thoughts, a few suggestions about what's going on in here. But there are a lot of assumptions that you could make, but I want you to make sure you make them in the analysis column, because the summary, again, I know I'm repeating it over and over again, the summary is just what you see, not how you feel about it, not what you think about it, not what you think is being suggested. So go ahead, pause the screencast, and I want you to fill out both columns both at once. So I can't wait to talk to you about this in person / via Zoom, but I really want to talk about what kind of conclusions you drew and what you think is going on here. I've got some conspiracy theories that I'd like to share with you from former classes that should be fun, but we can talk about that. If you have questions, please keep them until we get to talk in person. All right, so I do want you to write maybe like a sentence or two. How does your summary, I want you to put it into your own words, how does your summary differ from your analysis? What do you think you're doing differently for those two pieces of your effort, I guess? And then essentially what we're building towards, the reason that we're starting with paintings and talking about analysis versus summary is we're building towards these guest speakers. What is the difference between summarizing what, for example, our first guest speaker, Mr. Rennell, is going to say? What's the difference between summarizing what he's saying and analyzing what he's saying? And then finally, our third piece, which we'll talk a little bit about tomorrow or the next day I see you, is reflection. How is that different? So on this last page, I've kind of summed it up in as few words, as succinctly as I could. Summary is what they said. Analysis is why it's important. And reflection, this is where it gets to you. How does it connect to your website topic? So each time we have a guest speaker, and Mr. Rennell is actually the hardest one to do this for, but every time we have a guest speaker, you're going to reflect on how this information connects to your website topic. So if you are struggling with Mr. Rennell, especially because he's talking specifically about Darwin and the theory of evolution, you can come and talk to me, you can Zoom with me, you can email with me, we can figure out a way to find a connection. But for some of the other things, like for example, if we do a self-defense lesson, that's pretty standard how it's going to help you with your website, no matter what your topic is. But what I want you to take away from this lesson, and then I'm going to say goodbye, I promise, is these three pieces. The summary is what they said, the analysis is why it's important, and then the reflection is how it connects to your website topic. Collect all your questions for our meeting on Zoom, and I hope to see you tomorrow.